In my writings on projecting as part of the art of inner alchemy, I have mentioned that it is possible to live for days, perhaps years, in another world, another dimension while projecting, and that even though these projections might seem like days to you as a projectionist, these projections may only have taken minutes, in accordance with physical clock time. Some readers might wonder how this is possible. How can someone live out a lifetime in a dream, in a projection, while only having used up hours of physical clock time? How is this intensity possible in projections? Well, I think that most people have, or know about, someone that has had the experience of taking a light nap, and even though they were sleeping for what could have been minutes in clock time, it actually felt to the sleeper like this quick nap was much longer. In other words, many people have had an experience where internal time, dream time, seems to happen at a much different rate than external physical clock time. Such experiences can help in understanding how a projectionist can defy the laws of rational clock time. Just like a regular person can access a seemingly extended dream time, an inner alchemist can do the same, but for much longer and in a far more lucid manner. What is happening here is that inner alchemists, through their ability to increase the power of their attention, can take full advantage of that flexibility of inner time. By becoming powerful projectionists, that is, people that can project inwardly and then outwardly, which some may refer to as astral travel, these practitioners can move farther and farther away from what could be referred to as the objective physical and three-dimensional world. In doing so, they can in that fashion move into different dimensional, or psychological, inner psyche locations, where there can be a great alteration, a great difference, between that internal time, in that dimensional location, and outer physical clock time. Through their ability to focus their attention to an incredible degree, and their growing prowess as projectionists, inner alchemists can go to places that seem like faraway dream places, but that are actually out there places, other dimensional places, other locations, other very real worlds, where on occasion, time works differently, it moves slower or better yet faster, than physical time. Projectionists have learned to take advantage of the fact that in other dimensions, time can have different intensities. When such a projectionist becomes powerful and experienced enough, they can map out new territories in locations that are nowhere in the realm of physical and rational human reality, and they can then move into these locations for extended periods of time in a fully awake manner. Once this is possible, such a transdimensional traveler can in those other locations live out entire existences, the equivalent of entire lifetimes sometimes, in other dimensions, partaking in what may even be great adventures that only take up hours of physical clock world time. Such an individual then can be said to be incredibly old, even though from a physical point of view, in accordance with clock time, they do not seem to be that old at all, because such individuals have lived out many lifetimes of adventure, in regions of high intensity. In other words, an entire lucid, that is conscious and remembered experience that may seem to be months or years long, can be lived out in one night of physical time, and, upon waking, after such an intensity, such a traveler may wake up as a wholly different person, an increasingly alien person. What is very difficult for the average person to comprehend is that all of us, all humans, at least those that can believe enough to at least take a chance and learn these skills, can access other dimensions as projectionists, and those other dimensions are not bound to the same rules, the same gravity, that binds this dimension. That being the case, depending on where you go, and what maps you may have been able to make, you can live out experiences that truly defy all rational ideas about life and the nature of existence. When a projectionist has accumulated enough energy, using the containment techniques of inner alchemy, such an augmented person, such a person that has extra energy, can use that energy to increase their focus of attention, so that what they focus their attention on becomes unwavering, stable. With such unwavering focus, they can then use that extra power to become stable and lucid master inner travelers, projectionists, that can travel to particular places for extended periods. Such experienced inner travelers, after developing relentless focus and experience, can hit a kind of threshold in their capabilities. They can reach an incredible point in their perceptive power. This means that such an individual, with such power and experience does at a certain point, cross a type of energetic line, where those inner projections become so vivid, so lifelike, that these new places that they project to become true energetic other realities, other worlds. At that point it can be said that they have really, energetically, moved, become a part of, new locations, other dimensions, other oh-so-real worlds. Let me repeat that, other real worlds. It is at this point, when these inner travels become so real, through the augmentation of focus and the development of prowess, as a projectionist, that physical clock time is transcended. When this happens, a projectionist is unbound and breaks free to a great degree from the three-dimensional cage that corrals most of humanity, and they can begin to explore worlds that are not just as real as the physical waking one, but are also other times, complete other lives, other dimensions, that allow such a traveler to transcend the average human notion of life experience. Such people may be a certain age physically, but internally, energetically, experientially, they may be hundreds of years old, and may have experienced such wonders, such unbelievable adventure and living experience, that the average human world becomes almost boring and commonplace to them, and in the end this human, physical, three-dimensional place becomes what it was always meant to be, just one stop in an infinitude of possible places available for us to explore. At such a point, life changes for the projectionist, and at that point they will know as an energetic fact, as a lived and experienced fact, that those other dimensional realities are as real and stable as anything possible in the physical world. But those that do not have this experience of knowing may wonder, how do you know that those worlds are stable? That they are as stable as the physical world? Could it be that every time that you project you are just going to dreamland, or an infinity of parallel worlds, that are different each time? That is a good question, and as a projectionist with a little bit of experience at seeing this supposedly absolute three-dimensional reality, from a position outside of it, I might ask such a person, how do you know that where you go to over and over again in the physical world is the same place that you were the day before? In other words, how do you know the locations of the places where you live? How do you know that they are not new places, new worlds, each time you wake up from sleep? How do you know that your physical world is stable? That it is an unchanging world? That it is not, at each instance, a new parallel world? A growing number of modern scientists are saying that this world may be a persistent kind of illusion, a simulation. Is this not the developing theology of the times? And if the physical world is a simulation, how do we know that the world that we wake up to each morning is the exact same world as yesterday? How do we know anything is real or stable? Maybe the world is all fake in a way, a parallel world each time we wake up in the morning. What a nightmare perhaps, such a thought. But, to answer this question, the fundamental answer is, I suppose, that there is no real way to know for sure that you do not wake up to a different world every day. But I can tell you what a projectionist knows, and about the techniques that they use to map out territory, and in that way find stability in alien dimensions, which can then help in understanding this dimension, simulation or not. For them there are different ways to know, or create stability, whether you are in this physical world that may be a simulation, or another dream world, another projection location beyond this dimension. And it is something that most people, average people, do quite unconsciously, like a type of unconscious survival heuristic. First, they internally measure how real things seem, in accordance to how real their senses say something is. They trust their senses. And then they further make things more real and stable by following the consensus, the opinion of other people existing in this world. If it feels, looks, tastes, smells, and sounds real to you, and it is as real to another supposedly, as it is to you, and yet to another, and another, and another still, then such consensus in time means that for all of you this one thing, and eventually this one place, is real. The mob rules, in a way. This is how we differentiate the sane from the insane, the relatively smart from the idiotic. A map of the physical world is therefore created by your intellect, by you, through your perceptions and by the consensus of the people that you see in this world. In this physical dimension, for example, you remember, memory is very important, and you trust in the consistency of your perceptions and in the consistency of all those around you, this and those perceptions of perceptions you remember. When this consistency is established, the memory of this consistency is your map. A map is a repeatable memory. The fundamental difference between sanity and insanity between a physical thing and an illusion or delusion, for an inner alchemist, for a projectionist, is dimensional stability, meaning crossing that threshold that I mentioned earlier where things become truly real for you no matter where you are as a lucid being, and the consensus by the mass of those aware entities, in this case the people, participating, focusing their unrelenting attention on that dimensional location. Projectionists use those sanity rules to create consistency, stability, that they then turn into maps through memory. Some say that only physical things can hurt or kill you, and yet as any experienced psychologist knows all too well, supposedly mental delusions are as real to the supposedly deluded as anything real to the sane, and those illusions from those supposedly deluded people can hurt them, and if they are believed with the fervor of the deluded, then illusions can hurt others as well. If I tell you to think of a juicy sour lemon in your mouth, of the dripping sour juice falling into your mouth, stinging your lips, and your mouth waters because of these phrases, these ideal words, then basically that illusion of an illusory lemon is real to you in a way. These words and this image is making your mouth water, something that is supposed to be an autonomic reaction, a reaction that you can't supposedly control consciously, and yet you are changing the supposed rationally impossible through a kind of short and shallow projection of attention. If this is possible with a simple image, idea, held by a person with average power to focus, then what can the relentless focus of a master projectionist do? What can the delusion of a powerful inner alchemist do? And if such a delusion is held by a number of people, then is there a point when that delusion becomes real? Inner alchemists believe that the world is a kind of highly persistent delusion where both dimensionality, a particular dimensional location bound by certain energetic laws, and group consensus, living beings either bound or freely focusing with unrelenting power on particular dimensional location perceptions, create a stability referred to as a world. The difference between average people and inner alchemists is that people believe that this is the only real world. They believe this because they are stuck in this one dimension, but projectionists through their direct experience have experienced directly that this is just one in a multitude of other worlds that they can travel to, that there are infinite persistent other worlds out there, not just this one, and in that sense, this world is a simulation. And just like the incredibly consistent map, through perceptive focus and consensus, that we have created for this physical world, this same thing can be done in worlds beyond the one that we call physical reality. In those other worlds, there are different things to remember and different consistency rules, but maps can be created just like the very stable and consistent one that has been created for this one. Fundamentally, just like there is no real way to find out whether you wake up to a new world every day, there is no way to find out if you are projecting into a world that is very similar, but with tiny differences. In the end, all that we can do is trust in our map and our consistencies, or perhaps it is better to say that we should not trust any of our maps or consistencies to the point that we think they are all truth, all reality, but use them nonetheless while in this world or any world, because after all is said and done, that is all that we have, these memories, these maps, to keep us somewhat sane, because after all, at least to an inner alchemist, the only real difference between sane and insane is consensus. In modern times we say that dreaming, projecting or astral travel are a replica of the real world. Dreams are just so much unconscious noise and repression. Dreams can't harm you, you just wake up. And yet, for those that can remember them better than most, and for those that seriously study them, and academia is not seriously studying them in my opinion, dreams can kill, they can heal, they are as real as anything could be. And yet they exist in a seeming no place, the dreamscape, that to the average person does not seem real, certainly not as real as waking life, the waking world. But to a projectionist, dream locations are real. Indeed, those worlds can be in many ways even more real than this physical place, and some practitioners have mapped out those other places with such precision that for them, this human waking world is in no way more real than those other alien places. In the end, illusion, simulation, reality, is a far more relative measure than most could ever imagine, at least for the inner alchemist, and thanks to such delusions, an inner alchemist can experience marvels. To free yourself in such a manner, if you wish to experience lifetimes and unbounded realities like projectionists do, what you must begin to come to terms with is not whether something is real or not, a simulation or not, but that multiple things can be real at a certain dimensional, psychological, awareness position, and not real at others, and that we humans do have the possibility of existing in multiple positions, multiple dimensions. We humans can break the three-dimensional cube, and when we do, when we can know directly that there are so many other real places out there, the reality of the real, or the illusion of the mob consensus, becomes inconsequential. The real horror is not that this objective world might not be real, a simulation, as some like to believe in this modern period. It is instead that we humans, most of us, are stuck, being corralled, being kept like prisoners, in only one position, one dimension, even though we have the potential to experience so much more. We are in a simulation, but not the kind of simulation that most people believe. Instead, the simulation is the clouding of the energetic fact that this supposed only real world is just one possible stop for us humans. If you would like to know more about the nature of the human simulation, why we are trapped here, who traps us, how to escape, project, and even leave the illusion of the life and death cycle behind, I recommend the Inner Alchemist course book trilogy, which is made up of the Magnum Opus, The Way of the Projectionist, and The Way of the Death Defier.